Welcome back to the shop. This is part 2 of the YZ250F 2022 full motor rebuild. In part 1, I showed you how this motor dropped the valve and just completely trashed the cylinder head, the cylinder, and bent the rod. All the parts are in, or I believe they are. I'm going to have to go through all and make sure we have all of them. If you didn't catch part 1, there'll be a link in the description where you can catch that. But yeah, alright, I got to run through all these parts, so let's do that. We have about $3,315 worth of parts. And if you remember in part 1, I mentioned that he was going to consider going with the GYTR race kit that comes with the modified cylinder head, camshafts, the ECU, CDI, whatever you want to call it, and all that. But he decided to opt out of that because they're shooting for the stock class. They're working to go to Loretta's, and they're going to be racing the stock class. So we have to keep the bike stock for the most part. So far here we got uni filter. He decided to go ahead and put some GYTR radiator supports on it. We got a lot of parts to dig through here. He's going with aluminum throttle tube. Get rid of the plastic one. We have a ton of parts. We're going to dig through all this stuff. Some new brake pads while we're at it. But yeah, $3,315 worth of parts. It's crazy, but you know, that's how it goes sometimes. And we will be doing some blueprinting. We're going to check the crankshaft, make sure it's true. Just some general blueprinting. What that is just trying to get the motor as perfect and accurate as we can without actually breaking any of the rules as far as modifications are concerned. We can't really do any modifications because it's a stock class, and if he gets protested and they rip the bike open, well, you don't want to fail that test. So keeping it stock, but we will be doing some blueprinting. Try to do what we can so the bike runs as efficiently and as powerful as it can while staying relatively stock. Alright, what I'm going to do is verify that all the parts, there's no parts missing. I'm going to run through the order right there, make sure we have everything. I'm going to put that in fast speed so you know you don't have to sit here and you can watch it, but it'll be fast. Let's do it. Okay, it appears we have everything besides the other stuff I showed you earlier on. You got 2 spark plugs, 1 spare, some valve seals, or the guide seals, all 4 new valves. 1, 2, 3, there's a 4th one here somewhere. Here it is. All 4 new valves. Brand new crankshaft. We're going to true that. We got brand new valve springs. I guess I should explain this. Remember in the first video when I was trying to figure out what happened, what went wrong? Well, I think we kind of narrowed it down. We got brand new head bolts, and because we don't. Okay, first off, we thought this bike only had 56 or 52 hours on it, at least the whole bike, right? We bought it from a race team. I'm not going to mention which race team, so you know, but. We bought it from a race team. It was supposed to be their practice bike. We were assuming it was a stock bike. I don't know if he was told if it was a stock bike and never opened up or not. But when I first saw it, when I was told it only had 22 hours on it at that time, I was under the impression it was a stock bike myself and never been torn apart. But after further observation, I noticed that piston's not a stock piston. The piston that we pulled out of it in video number 1. That's a like a Pro X piston or whatever. Okay, we got a brand new cylinder for it. And so what that told me is someone has been in that motor. Now here's the thing. It was a race team's bike, maybe a practice bike, and someone's already been in the motor. But I don't think the motor had ever been out of the bike. I checked all the bolts that hold the motor down. I don't see any witness marks that anyone's ever removed that motor out of the bike. But someone has definitely done a top end on it. So with that kind of... It makes me suspicious as far as, like, you know, usually race teams will put modified parts on a bike. So did that bike originally have a modified head on it, camshafts and piston, and then when they went to sell it, they had to convert it back to stock? They might have just, when you have multiple bikes and you're a race team, you have all these parts on the shelf and they all get mixed up we don't know that cylinder head, how many hours it had on it. Okay, you got a brand new piston kit here. We don't know how many hours it had on it. We have our gaskets, cylinder gasket, head gasket. For some reason, they sent us 2 of these gaskets. Whatever. It's better to have extra parts than missing parts, right? So here's what I'm speculating. I'm speculating that they pulled their race head off and just threw any piston in there, and just any head off the shelf, and with unverified hours. We don't know how many hours were on that head, which means we don't know how many hours were on the valves. Now, valves should be replaced at 200 hours, no matter on a race bike or a track bike. I understand the guys that are play riding in the woods or whatever, it's a totally different story. I get in the comments oftentimes, I've gotten 600 hours out of my bike. Well, yeah, you know, you're just you're trail riding through the woods. Track bikes are different. They're doing jumps. You don't take them chances when you're going wide open throttle in 4th gear at a big triple. And plus the extra abuse that a bike gets. It's punched out of every corner. It's just pinned out of every corner, lap after lap after lap. So valves should be replaced at 200 hours with your crankshaft at 200 hours, no matter how good it checks out, for safety reasons. I have seen valves where the head can just fall off after a certain amount of hours. It just happens. They get tired. They get fatigued. Too many heat cycles. I'm starting to think that's what happened on this one, because we couldn't find any other reason why that valve would have made contact with the piston the way it did. I believe it's just started to fall off, made a little bit of contact with the piston, and that just did it in. I've seen it, man, you know, and that's all I can say. Got brand new crank bearings here. Now, that being said, I do have to correct an error from video number 1, in that, because I was able to rotate the motor by hand, before I pulled it apart, I should at least verify the cam timing to make sure that we didn't have a timing chain tensioner fail and it jumped timing, and that's why the valves hit the piston. However, I will say, if you remember part 1, you can see that only one intake valve originally made contact, not both. That indicates to me that it didn't jump timing, because anytime it jumps timing, both intake valves move together, and both would have made contact with the piston. So it didn't jump timing. However, for good practice, and for you guys out there that are watching this video to learn or whatever, if you can rotate your motor by hand still, verify the cam time before you rip it apart, because anytime a motor blows, it's real important to find out what caused it to happen, so that you can avoid from going through that again, so it doesn't happen again. We got a brand new cylinder head. We're going to have to put that together. We're going to be doing that in this video. There might be a part 3 to this build, because this is going to be a lot of work. So we're going to start with the cylinder head, crank truing first, then cylinder head, and I think part 3 is where we're going to put the motor together and put it back in the bike and get it running. Alright, and if you remember in part 1, I mentioned about the camshafts. When anytime a valves make contact with the piston, it can sometimes shift the camshafts, the gear that's pressed on there. It can shift it and just knock your cams out of whack. So I mentioned to him we should at least get a new intake camshaft for that reason. He doesn't want to take any chances. They don't want to miss out on this season. They don't want another failure. So he told me just get both camshafts. I'm like, okay, you got it. Let's get both camshafts. And he's trying to have this thing built to a level that it just hangs in there, and we don't want to leave any stone unturned. So, because of that, we did get a brand new cam chain tensioner. Again, it was my error. I should have checked the cam time before I pulled it apart to make sure this thing didn't fail, because sometimes these can fail, but on the bench they'll bench test just fine. You put it back in the bike and it jumps timing again. On the bench, you can squeeze it, you can pull this out, you can put it anywhere and touch it, and it's holding up. But for some reason, on the bike with the vibration and stuff, they can actually give up. I've seen it. It's rare, but it does happen. For you guys who are wondering where you get them little keyways that help you hold the cam timing in, they usually come on a brand new timing chain tensioner right there. Watch this. It's going to extend down on us here. There it is. There's your little tool for that. Let me stick that back in the bag. Don't want to lose that. Actually, I'll just put it right up here. Add it to my collection. Them things are really cool to have. When you ever get them, hold on to them little tools. Them are nice. Alright. So we have a brand new oil filter. I know I'm doing a lot of talking here, but I have a lot to tell you guys. Brand new timing chain and the timing chain tensioner gasket. Woo! Well, that's all the engine parts. As you know, we also have the brand new grips for OEM Yamaha grips, some brake pads, air filter, and radiator supports. But that's it for the OEM parts. And I know I'm leaving something out. As I remember things I had to tell you guys through the video, I'll just spit it out. Let's go ahead and get that crank on the truing stand. And let's check it's true. Oh, that's right. Because, again, we don't know. This top end's already been apart. So I've got new cylinder head bolts. My philosophy is these should be replaced every other top end that you do on a bike. They stretch out, right? In the motocross world, some people say every third top end you replace them. I just do it every other. In my experience, when I go to torque it down, I can tell when they've been stretched out too far. They're torque to your yield bolts, and I can feel it on the torque wrench and how it's hard to explain, but I found if you try to run them 3 times, it's just a little bit too much. So I do it every other time. It's perfect. But we don't know if this has had a top end already done 3 times. We don't know. This is not a virgin bike. We thought it was a virgin, but it's not. So we're going to go ahead and replace the cylinder head bolts while we're in there. And the same applies for the valve springs. At 200 hours, remember I said at 200 hours you should replace your crankshaft on a track bike, no matter how well it checks out. Just to be safe, rods break out of nowhere. Just like valves can break out of nowhere, the rod can snap after 200 hours just from fatigue, heat cycles, abuse. And again, it's just a safety thing. I understand if some people will say they've gotten 500 hours out of the crankshaft. Right. We're talking about track bikes here, and we're doing this for safety. I understand it might make it 200 hours. But by changing it, 400 hours, but by changing it 200 hours, you're going to keep your rider safer. So that's why we also got new valve springs. We got new valve springs for this brand new cylinder head, because valve springs can break too. They're a million miles an hour. Just they break after a while, and then yeah. So we got new valve springs. Okay, got my little trusty truing stand here. You know, sometimes people make something for you, it's custom made or whatever. Joe made this for me. These things are so cool, man. I love it when I have stuff like this. I keep it for years. You know, it just become kind of personal. It's really cool. That's all I'm saying. All right. Specs say right here from the manual. Now, you see how they have it connected? They're checking the true. You see it's all the way on the very end, the dial indicator on a truing stand. Run out should be no more than 0.03 millimeters. 0.03. Alright, so that's how I have it set up here. Let's do this. I'm going to zero it out. Anytime I see a negative, I'll zero it out again. I had to get creative and put a little washer perfect size right here on this bearing race all the way up in there, because it was actually, there's a part of the crank that was catching the truing stand as I turned it there. So that's what that's there for, but it works. Okay, there's a negative. Anytime you see a negative, I'll zero it out so we can get the highest number. Okay, so far we're at 1. When it's right, I should be able to get all the way back down to 0. There it is. Let's go ahead and do another rotation. Let's get 2 rotations in. Let's see. There's 1. This crank's looking great, by the way. Because they're saying a maximum of 0.03. So anything tighter than that, there we are, back to 0. This is a 0.01. That's great. I'm not going to try to get it any better than that, because most time you can't. That's why they have a 0.03. So a lot of times from the factory, you're going to find them at, if you buy a brand new crank, 0.03, 0.02. If you get a 0.01, that's actually kind of exceptional crank. If you get zeros all the way across, well, you got yourself a unicorn. Now, I'm not going to check the other side. As you saw in the manual, they didn't show the checking the other side. You don't have to. If one side is out of true in any way, you're going to see it on one side. Or I'm saying if either side is out, you're going to see it just on this side alone. And the reason I'm not going to check both sides is because you really can on this crank. This right here is not a smooth machine surface, and these are definitely not smooth. There's really nowhere to put your dial indicator. Like, this is a smooth machine surface, and that's why the manual showed you setting it right here. This crank's good. It's really good. We're going to use it just the way it is. Now, if it was off true, just a little bit, I would have attempted to put it back in true. If it's off a lot, I'm going to mail it back. get another one. But this one's good. If you're curious of how to true a crank, I'll put a link down in the description on truing cranks where I trued my own crank and give you a walkthrough there. Let's continue on. Alrighty, brand new crankshaft. And what we're really checking when we check the true more than anything else is to make sure it wasn't dropped during, they wrap it pretty good in the box, as you saw when I was opening all the boxes for everything. But, sometimes a crank is dropped at Rocky Mountain, Motorsport, the Mailman, whatever. It hits them just right. You'll see in my truing video in the description where I dropped my crank and knocked it off true and actually had to put it back into true. It happens, So that's what we're checking. Some brands don't even wrap them that good in the box. Yamaha actually comes wrapped pretty well. I've seen some brands where it's just sitting in the box. You buy the crank and it's just sitting in a dang box with nothing around it. But that's really all we're checking. Brand new cylinder head. Look how shiny that thing is. Woo-wee! Alright. We gotta assemble this thing. It's gonna be fun. Actually, before I assemble this, I still have to take the parts that are reusable out of the original cylinder head, so let's go get that. Dang it, my air line's leaking right there. That drives me nuts. I'll replace that later. Anyway, let's go ahead and start taking this stuff off. Let me try to get that a little bit better here. There we go. Alright. We have that off there. Man, this thing stinks. Smells a little funky. Okay, whatever. These. Put them back over here so when I go to put the motor back together. Okay, let me set that aside so I don't bump it. I have to get these studs out and these studs out. I'll save that for the last thing I do. Man, look at that. I'll save that for the last thing I do. Okay, I guess I'll start with the intake. Do one at a time. I don't want to get anything mixed up. I'll keep the stock shim valves. I'll start with them when it's time to shim the new valves because that'll get us pretty close. And then from there, we'll just make minor adjustments. Got to get these out because I need some of the parts from in there. Okay, break out my valve spring puller. For my valve spring puller, it's just a big C-clamp with a socket cut out. They do sell valve spring pullers and they're reasonably priced, and you can go ahead and buy one of them. I made this years ago and it's just been doing me good, so I just kind of stuck with it. Let's see, I'm trying to figure out how I can arrange this to get it on video. Let me get all this set up. Okay, for my homemade valve spring puller, I got the little swivel off the end there so the ball will sit right in the little concave part of the head here. Again, I put this together years ago. I didn't have a valve spring puller and someone needed me to change some valves and it worked so well I just kind of stuck with it. So yeah, I'll put this in here on top of the spring retainer and I'm just going to compress it. There we go. It'll pop when you first get it compressed. You're going to need a magnet for all this stuff. The smaller magnets like that one right there work best for this. I grab the keepers. There's one. That's all we're doing. Oh, get on camera here. That's all I'm doing. I'm pulling off these little keepers. There's two for each valve. Now I can loosen up the spring compressor all the way. The valve spring compressor. There we go. We have the retainer thing, doohickey deal. The valve spring, one observation which I'll mention a few times in the video, the pain inside of the spring is always the upside. It's always the side that goes up because the coils get tighter down at the bottom and they're more spread out up top, so it's less weight as it's pushing the valve up and down, less likely to float. So that's why they do that. Okay, that's for that intake. Now, it has a Let me push the valve on out, actually. There we go. Got the valve. Alright, it has a valve, what do you call it? Valve guide seal in there. I need to pull that out. So let me grab something, yank that out of there. Here you go. I'm just gonna destroy it pulling it out. But that's alright, we have new ones. There it is. Here's valve guide seal. That goes in the trash. Okay, now, where's my magnet? Here it is. We got the spring seat, I guess you can call it. It's probably not the right name for it. Got it. The oil kind of holds it there. There we go. Comes right on out of there. Alright, and that's it for that one. Everything's out of there. This is the broken valve. How am I going to do that? I'm just going to... think I'm going to have to get a little heavy-handed here for a second. Grab myself a hammer. Head's trash anyway. Boy, that sucker's in there. Wow. Titanium likes to spark. Huh. Well. Huh. There is more than one way to skin a cat. If I need to get them keepers off there because what I need is, I don't need the spring. We have a new spring. I need this part off the bottom. I probably should have just bought one. Honestly, I wouldn't have to sit here and try to pull this off. My bad. Well, let me see if I can just compress it and pull them keepers out. Oh, I don't even, well, I guess I do need it. Alright. Let's see what we can get done here. Alright. Come on. There's one. Got one out. Alright. I think the other ones in there are a little bit tighter. We'll see what we can do here. Let me try like this. And loosen it back up. We got one out. If I could just get that other one out, we will be good. Yes, got it. All right. Well, actually, I need two parts from here. I need the top and the bottom piece. So yeah, because them aren't really wear items, so we can reuse them. Got this that goes on top of the spring. Ding ding. The old valve spring. Oh, I'm gonna have to get the valve seal out of there. Come on, there it is. Oh, I'm sorry, the valve guide seal. And let me pull this out. There we go. Okay, that's the intake stuff. Now let's go ahead and get the exhaust stuff out. It's going to be pretty much the same thing as with the intake valves. Got the valve shim right up in there. Want to keep that. Again, I'm going to start with all OEM, the original shims. Yep, that'll get us really close. I have one valve shim that's being stubborn there. When that happens like that, all you have to do is take a little punch, put it right on the side right here, and just give it a tap. Not on the valve shim itself, but on the this thing right here. There it is. Got two of them to remove here. Okay, I'm going to do this the same way I did the intake valves. I'm going to do it in fast motion to save time. So here we go. Okay, this old head is pretty much stripped down for the most part. I still have to move this plug over to the other cylinder and remove the studs, but I'm going to do that after I get the valves in. I don't feel like doing that right now. I'd rather stay up on the valve job. Alright, I got to remove these cam caps. There we go. Anytime you buy a brand new cylinder head, it will come with cam caps. They won't sell you just the cam caps if you ever damage these. The old practice was every set of cam caps was drilled out to that cylinder head, was cut out to it. But I can tell you the machining nowadays is so accurate that if you did damage a cam cap and you had to get one from someone, maybe used on eBay or whatever, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be fine. The machining is so accurate nowadays. Okay, time to start putting this thing together. So let me get some new parts out. First, let me figure out what valve guide seals go where. 2 are for the intake, 2 are for the exhaust. The intake will have on this motor, some motors are the same, but on this motor, the intake, I believe, we'll look at the intake valves and see, or actually I can just look in here and see. So there's the intake. You can see the hole's bigger than the exhaust where the valve goes in. So the intake has the valve stem is bigger. Has a larger diameter. So lay these flat here and see which ones are which. These two are the exhaust. They're smaller. I think I'm going to start with the intake. Let's start with the intake. So I'll set these aside. And these are the 2 intake ones. I'll leave these right here. Okay. So we're going to start with the intake. I'll take these 2 things. Sorry, they're wet. I just cleaned them in some gasoline. Drop them in their respective seats. I'll use a magnet to get it up in there. Go. Of course, you want the that end right there facing upward, obviously. All right, I have them in place. Now we need to drop the valve guide seals on there. I'm going to take the old intake valve that's, we're not going to be using it, but what I'll do is I'll slide that into the valve guide. That one tried to jump out. Actually, no, I don't think yeah, there we go. I was going to say, it's not going on. Because that's going to, by having that in there, it's going to help me slide the new valve guide seal on there. Went and found a socket that fits on there like that. So I'll just set the valve seal on the valve here. Now obviously the valve stem's going to hit inside the socket, so as I push it down, I'll let the valve just drop down. There we go. All that does is keep it in line for us. So it goes on nice and easy. Let's do the next one. Some suckers keep trying to roll out of there. There you go. Once you get the valve guide seals in there, that little spring seat stays in place. All right, take this. Like I said, once the valve tip hits the socket, I'll just let the valve drop. There it is. All right, they're in place. Okie dokie. Now it's time to set the new intake valves in place. Cut the new intake valves out. About to take my gloves off here in a minute, because at this part of the job you have to be really, really clean. And when I'm barehanded, I can feel if any grit got on my fingers and address that before it becomes an issue. With gloves on, it's kind of hard to feel that. So here they go. Okay. The valve seats. This is a new cylinder, so we're okay. But if you got a used one, you want to clean the valve seats before you drop in new valves. I suggest very fine steel wool. Here's the stuff right here. You want the steel wool. You want 0000 super fine. That's what you want to use. And you'll just do it by hand. Just go wipe all around the valve seat here on the cylinder head and just clean off the carbon. That's all you're looking to do. Do not use sandpaper. Do not use anything abrasive like that. You just want to use steel wool. We're expecting metal, I know it's titanium, but basically metal to seal on metal. There can't be any scratches, there can't be nothing like that, so very fine steel wool only. Now if you're reusing your valves and they still are in good shape and they have carbon and stuff on it and you want them to give them the seal, quick tip, put them on a drill and you can spin them, take your fine steel wool, and as it's spinning you can clean up your valve. That's how you do it. Don't use sandpaper. Don't try to scrape it off. None of that stuff. Just very fine steel wool. But anyway, what I'm going to do here is, before I drop each valve in, I'm going to wipe it with my finger here. Sorry. Yeah, let's do that. Wipe it with my finger. Make sure it's real clean. Knock out both sides while I'm here. I'm just trying to get anything that I can feel off of there. That's it. You know, any dust that might have fallen on it. And then for the valve seat right here, or where the valve makes contact with the seat, I want to wipe that clean too. Now, because if this was a used cylinder head and we're just doing a top end, putting in new valves, it's not that critical. But because some valve guides are brand new and the valve's brand new, I will put a dab of assembly lube on the shaft of the valve and just wipe it in. I'll do that to the other one too, because it's going to take a little bit for the oil to slowly get to them through the valve guide seals. You know, that's where they get their oil from, but it'll take time on initial startup. So I got the oil on that. Now I'm going to make sure these are clean again. I'm going to double check this, because even just one grit of sand is going to make it where when we go to adjust our valves, we won't get a proper reading, because it'll keep the valve lifted up just a hair. But what I like to do before I adjust the valves and make sure that there's no sand or anything blocking it is we'll just check it with some water, pour it in this port, and make sure it seals good. Okay. There we go. Let's go ahead and lock these in. I tried to keep the valves, both of them, fully seated once they're in there. Don't let them kind of pop their head up a little bit, because again, you don't want any dust in the shop or anything to land on the surface and jack up your work. Okay, so we're doing the intake valves, so gotta find the intake springs. Instead of searching up the part numbers, I know the intake springs are fatter, so I'm just gonna pull them all out of the bag and use the fatter springs. They're bigger valves, so they use bigger, fatter springs on the intake. Alright, dropping trash everywhere. Okay, them are my two exhausts, so I'll set these over here. These are the two intakes. Now, just like I mentioned earlier, the painted side, that's the side that goes upward. You'll notice that the coils are tighter down here at the bottom where it's not painted, and up here they are wider. Painted side goes up top. Just remember that. Okay. Gonna get some grease here. Okay, I'm gonna take these parts right here. Take some grease. Let me get a Q-tip. I just don't want to get this grease all over my hand. That's just gonna help hold it on top of the valve spring for me. There we go. Alright, time to compress them and slide the keepers on. Let me get the ones for the intake over here. There they are. Okay, let's do it. For this part, you're going to want a long screwdriver that preferably has some magnetic properties. See how it can pick that up? But if not, it's okay, because we will still be relying on grease to hold that keeper on and in place. Just like that. You can put grease on there and it'll hold it on just fine. Pick a rag here to get all that dirty grease on. Alright, here we go. Let me try to get you up in here a little bit better with the camera, if possible. Because this is going to be the tougher part for most of you guys. Just going to go ahead and start with the bottom one. I'm going to compress the valve spring with the valve spring compressor. I like to bottom it out completely, but gently. It just keeps things more stable that way. Oops, it came off the seat a little bit. The socket kind of fell off to the side. Let me straighten that up. And it did it again. All right, here we go. Actually, let me remove this valve spring out of there for right now. It's getting all up in my face. Okay, this is where you put the keepers back on now. Let me get on the camera here. You'll notice, and get something to point with. You'll notice it on the inside of the keeper has a ridge right up here up top. That part goes up top and it goes into the groove. That's on the valve right there. Put a little more grease on it. If you put some grease on this side, I kind of made a mistake. Forgot to put grease on that side. There we go. That will hold it on the valve once we get it on the valve. Alright, let's try this again. I was sitting there putting it on the valve and wondering why it wasn't sticking. It's because I forgot to put grease on it. That thing's being a bear. I'll get it though. Try to use this pick, get it better in place. Okay, I got that one on there. I'm going to try to get you in the with the camera here. You can see, get the light up in there. If you can see, I have it on the bottom side of the valve there. You see it there? So now we have room, because what I did with that pick was after I stuck it on the top side, the part that's facing up, what I did with the pick is I rotated around to the other side so that I can put the next one on the top side where I have better access to it. Alright, let's do the next one. Again, I got to put grease on the inside here first, and then you use the grease to hold it on the flathead. Okay, I think I have it. Let's see. Let me get some better glasses too. I'm getting older. I used to never have to wear glasses. About 2 years ago, that all started to change. Okay, I think I have it correct. Okay, both keepers are in place on the valve. Let me show, since it's so hard to get the camera in there, I'll show you what I mean. They're both on the valve like that. They're being stuck on there with grease, but that's how they are on the valve, right? So now that I have both of them on the valve, okay, let's go ahead and remove the valve spring compressor. And I'm going to try to center it out the best I can. Oh, I see one's trying to jump out of the seat here. Let me pop that one back in. You want to keep the valve spring retainer centered as best as you can so it doesn't knock one of the valve keepers off. Alright, let me show you what we have here. You can see both these keepers are in their seat. It's looking good. This one's good. I'm going to go ahead and do the other one now. I'll do that one off camera the same way, just like I did this one, and then we'll test our work. Okay, the two intake valves are in. So let's go ahead and test the work. What I'm going to do is pour some water into the intake ports here. And let's just see if they hold the water. Make sure I got both valves covered. Oh, tilted. But yeah, look, you don't see any water dripping out of the bottom of the, or anywhere on these valves. So these valves are good. They've sealed well. And now what I'll do is I'll dump this water out, spray some WD-40 in there and blow that out, just so, you know, for obvious reasons. Alright, I dumped the water out. I'm going to spray some WD-40 in here. Wish it around a little bit. And dump that out and blow that out. And now what I'll do is take a valve bucket, cam bucket, whatever, and put it in each one. Just make sure it slides in easy. Goes in and out easy. There you go. There you go. That's just making sure that I didn't scratch any of the walls that this slides up and down in while I was doing that job. Or that there wasn't any, it's a factory defect or whatever the case is. Alright, let's start working on the exhaust. We have to get the valve guide seals in. So I'll take these little spring seats right here to go on the bottom. Let me see. I'll actually do it this way. It almost makes it easier. I'll take one of the old exhaust valves, put it in the hole. There you go. Sure does make that easy. Well, I did that. I might as well go ahead and put the valve guide seal on too. Same thing as with the intake valve. Just use a socket. Actually, let me get it on there first. It's a little bit deeper in the hole. There we go. There it is. Now let me do the other side. Great. I missed. There we go. Get the new valve seal. Valve guide seal. Keep pronouncing that wrong. All right. And again, this is where the gloves come off. I'm going to kind of walk you through one of these exhaust valves, and then I'll do the other one off camera. It's the same thing as the intake, honestly, but I figured I'll do it twice for the guy at home that is trying to do this on his own. Go ahead and cut these things out of the bag. Like I said, there's going to be a part 3 to this video, or this build. There may even be a part 4. Just depends on how fast I move along with it. It does take more time to do these builds when I'm making a video. Same thing, I'm wiping it clean with my finger. Oh, almost forgot I said my lube. Where did I put that stuff? Here we go. Gonna sprinkle some of that on the right here and just wet it up a little. Like I said, on the first startup, it's not going to have any oil, and these things are new. And the valve guides are new too. There's going to be a little bit of extra friction until them parts break into each other. Okay, wiping my hands clean again. Make sure all the dust is off of here. I like to use a clean finger instead of a rag, because rags, you know, they can leave debris behind on their own. Okay, same thing. I'm gonna, because you saw the intake valve sealed perfectly fine. If you put it together clean like this, they'll seal right off the top. If it didn't seal, sometimes I've had luck with pushing the valve open by, you know, putting the tool on it and pushing it. The springs aren't that tough. Cracking it open just a little bit and blowing air in there to shoot off whatever debris is there, and then I check again. If that doesn't work, then I take the valve back out and see what's going on. And if your valve guide or your valve seat's damaged, that's a whole nother topic. You might have to lap a valve, and that's a whole nother topic, and I have other videos where I explain how to do that. But I'm already explaining enough in this video, and I don't want to bombard you guys with too much info, so I'll leave that out of this one. Okay, let's get ready to put in the first one. A brand new valve spring. Again, the painted side goes upward. But if you are curious of how to lap a valve, just shoot me a message or whatever if you really need that information. I do have other videos out there where I have showed how to do that, and I can, you know, provide the link for that. In all honesty, you should never have to lap a valve in these dirt bikes. The valve seats are so well machined, and the tolerances are so good. You really shouldn't have to. But sometimes, you know, you might have a slight scratch on yours, and you don't want to buy a new cylinder head. And sometimes it's acceptable. But as long as your valve seats are in good shape and they don't have any damage, just clean them. That's all you have to do. This is not the car world, you know, where, you know, you always have to lap them. You know, I will be doing a video here shortly on even things like checking ring end gap on your pistons, and when you have to file them down, should you file them down, things like that, because there's a lot of people still doing that kind of stuff on these bikes, and in most cases it's not necessary. I'll explain that in that video. All right, we have to compress this one in. I think I'm going to use my smaller cutout socket here. Put some gloves on. Okay, let's get the keepers in on this exhaust valve. Again, it's the same thing as with the intake valve. I'm going to do my best to hold it centered as I compress it. Okay. Get my flathead with the grease here. There we go. This one actually, I'm probably gonna be able to show you a little bit better. It looks like I'm gonna be able to get the camera in there just a little bit better. Let me get them in first. Voila. Alright. I'm gonna grab one of these bent exhaust valves here. Let me show you. So same thing. It has that little ridge right there. Goes on like that. See how that is? I'm putting them on there like that, and the grease is what holds them on. Now let me get you down here and show you. You can see grease strings everywhere. You can see they are on top of the valve. One's on this side, the other one's on the other side. So let me go ahead and loosen up the spring compressor. Voila, that one's in there. Let me blow it out, the grease. Give you a better view of it here. You can see it's right up in there perfectly good. So, alright, I'm going to knock out the other one off camera, then we're going to check the work. Alright, both valves are in. I'm going to fill it up with water. And let's just sit here and watch it for a minute. It's looking good. I don't see any water leaking out or anything, so yeah, I think we're gonna be good. We'll be able to adjust them. Oh, let me dump that water out. And again, I will spray this port with WD-40 and go blow it out. Don't need to leave any water up in there. Let me go blow it out. Oh, and one last thing before I consider that part of the job done. Take a cam bucket here. Yep, you went in nice and smoothly. There we go. Alright, we're good. Now take this thing, set it aside for now, and break out this old junker. Let's get these studs off of there. Went ahead and put the wrench on it ahead of time. Take one nut, put it on upside down. The idea here is I'm hoping to lock them in together really good. And that should be able, I should be able to, there it is. First one's out of there. And I'll put it in this cylinder head. Oop, let me put this one on the top. I'll put the other one on the bottom. That way I have the space to work. There it is. Alright. So that's pretty much how you do the studs. Get this one off there. Come on now. There we go. I'm going to do that to the other 3. I'll do that off camera to save time, but I'm just going to do it the same way I did this one. I have to do that one there and these 2 down here. I'll knock that off camera to save time, but that's how you do it. But it's 5:08 p.m. Check out this beauty. 2022 KTM 450 SXF. 5th gear went out. I'll be doing a video on that. Full, I guess you can say transmission repair. We'll be putting a new piston in it while we're in there. Stay tuned for that. That'll be after I'm done doing all the stuff on the YZ250F. This is one beautiful bike. But yeah, it's pretty much a wrap for this video. Stay tuned for part 3. That'll be coming up tomorrow evening, where I go ahead and assemble the bottom end. Well, first I have to pull the bottom end out of here and put a new crankshaft in it and all that, reassemble it and put it back in the bike, and then we got to get the cylinder head on it and everything else like that and get her fired up for the first time. I appreciate all you guys out there, and catch you in the next video.